really think China is the future. It's very impressive. Tesla China team has done an amazing job. Really mind-blowing. Like, I'm just astounded by how good the job is. I've never seen anything built so fast in my life before, to be totally frank. And I think it's a good story for the world, and to say, like, look how much progress you can make in China. This is extremely impressive.
盘点如今外国人眼中的中国。
You know what the unemployment rate in China is? Neither do I, because I'm American and I'm stupid. It's got to be low, right? Those people get up at 3 in the morning to practice the violin for 4.5 hours. Then they work on math for 12 hours, and whatever's left are ninjas. If you think for 1 second we will ever catch up with them, you are out of your mind. Just sit at home and be patient until they take over. Quite frankly, they deserve our country.
The Chinese teach their people something very young. It's called the 100 Years of Shame. Now, you'll never hear your so-called scholars talk about this. Understand, Uncle D's the first one putting you on game. The Chinese people teach their children, their young people, something called the 100 Years of Shame. The 100 Years of Shame is the period in which they say, right, and they teach, and they believe this to their core, that China should be ashamed of itself, because in this 100 years, China worked to the benefit of other groups and against the benefit of the Chinese. And they teach their children that this should never, ever, ever, ever happen again. That at no point ever should China accept the ways of other people over their own. That no way should the Chinese people ever allow their nation to work better for other people, all while doing harm to their own citizens. This is why China has risen in the last 70 years the way it's risen. Peacefully, intact, culturally as solid as a nation has ever been in the history of the world. So I'm trying to figure out what your motive is. The Chinese are literally the most organized, evolved people. I mean, I don't know if we've ever seen anything like this in world history.
China has not illegally invaded and bombed a sovereign country in over 40 years, while the US and our allies have hardly stopped in the same period, killing millions of civilians, displacing millions more, and illegally sanctioning dozens of countries, and has flatly stated that they will not supply weapons to either side in the conflict. The EU has armed one side in the conflict, imposed massive sanctions, but continues to be one of Russia's biggest trade partners. Tell me, Mr. Stoltenberg, who has the most credibility?
China has done more for Africa than any other country.
I mean, it's true. That's not something anybody can argue with.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, they came, they laid down infrastructure. They actually did something that the European countries been around for 400 years and did nothing. That's why if you see Africa now hasn't been developed. This was the responsibility of France, Great Britain, Italy, Germany. These guys have been in Africa forever, and it's never been developed. China just started putting interest in Africa. Now you have roads, roundabouts, like they're actually putting structure down.
Entire cities from huge population from poverty to the middle class, cornered the market in 5G. Anywhere in the world these days, you better have a yen for travel. China alone, they have 40,000 kilometers of high-speed rail. America has none. Our fastest train is the tram that goes around the zoo in this impacted colon of a country. China sees a problem and they fix it. They build a dam. We debate what to rename it. That's why their airports look like this and ours look like this. 2 bus lines through environmental review. In Boston, took 16 years, 27-story skyscraper in 19 days. The San Yuan Bridge in Beijing in 43 hours. We binge watch, they binge build. We're not losing.
咱们两个国家有一个很明显的区别，我们这儿的人一点都不了解中国。我发现很多美国人连很基本的东西关于中国他不懂，中国人呢特别了解美国。美国人如果愿意互相学习，学点中国的文化、中国的历史，咱们世界就会变得很好。
Is that China ain't like us. I don't mean there's nothing in common. I don't mean we're not part of humanity. But its historical development is so different. And you've got to remember, you know, that we're very recent compared with China. And China is the longest continuously existing polity in the world. going back, well, arguably, it's one of the first, first settled with the fertile crescent, the first settled agriculture in the world. So China has a very, very long history, and maybe instead of people being surprised about China's rise now, this is the wrong way of looking at it. What we should be surprised about, maybe, is not the period since 1978, but what the hell went wrong between 1800 and 1949. Because for the most of the rest of the world, thousands of years of Chinese history, it was arguably one of, and often the most advanced country in the world. So you could say this is a return to what China is, and the Chinese think of it. We are returning to.
When people claim that, China has ulterior motives with Africa, China has the agenda to grab resources, China has the agenda to trap African countries into debt. For us, who knows the history, we just laugh and say these people, they don't know what they're talking, or if they know what they're talking, they've decided to distort the truth, because China did not start yesterday to help African countries, to work with African countries. And we've never seen any conditions, we've never seen any dictations to do anything that would compromise our sovereignty. That has never happened. Even you talked about debt trap. This debt trap is just a propaganda. As a matter of fact, many countries in Africa, they are indebted to other financial institutions. China's share is very, very little compared to other financial institutions and other countries. So whoever is alarming the world that China is putting Africa into debt trap, they have their own agenda.
I was the first time in China in 1995, and I was here back every 2 years, roughly. The changes are astronomical. Started having very good contacts with the United States in the 70s and 80s. Now it's time to have very good contacts with China, because China will be a world leader.
A lot of people see the rise of China as a threat. The Western powers, and most specifically America, they are so used to being in the front row seats. And suddenly the front row seats are occupied by people who are different. They're Asian. China will be the preeminent economic power, and a very strong military power too. And it takes some getting used to. When you're number one in class and suddenly a smarter kid comes and they get all the prizes, it's a blow to the ego. So the Western powers need to share. I don't think China has a particular philosophy of domination. I don't see China ever wanting to be the dominant power and trying to convince people to live the Chinese way. It's not in the Chinese DNA.
Despite having only 5% of the world's population, China has allowed 500,000 of their citizens to die from COVID-19, which is 20% of the world total. At least a third of those deaths are due to the fact that China does not guarantee their people health care. I'm sorry, that's the United States. Yeah, our government is the one that's killed 500,000 of our people and doesn't give everyone health care. Getting back to China's human rights abuses, they have the largest prison state in the world, regularly imprisoning over 2 million people every year. They are also quite racist, despite the fact that ethnic minorities only make up a third of their population under 18 years of age. They make up 2/3 of those under 18 incarcerated. So China is locking up children basically because their skin color or ethnicity is different than the... Oh, that's America too. God damn it! I see it now. The U.S. is the biggest prison state in the world, locking up 2 million people every year. Listen, guys, you need to mark the pages a little more clearly. Some professionalism. That's all I ask. Okay, let's get back to human rights violations by China. People of color are 3 times as likely to be killed by police in China. Nope! America! For I swear now we're on to China. This is some pretty gnarly stuff, okay? Rather than cooperating with the world to help end this pandemic, China has weaponized medical care and vaccines, withholding them from countries that it considers adversaries and dropping bombs in 7 countries around the world, causing untold destruction, death, and misery. I mean, China is truly a monster of a country. Wait, it's the United States too. Everything in here is about the United States. It's Holy.
记得关注再走哦。